like to show you how to set up your Aether game. So in your bag, you should have instructions, a Materia Prima board, an Opus board, Void board, and then 2 larger dice and 10 smaller dice. All of the dice have the same symbols on them. They have the 4 core elements, which is air, earth, fire, and water. And then they have a blank side, and then they have a special side called the Aether. You'll also, so to set the game up, you want to put the Materia Prima board in the middle, and the Opus and Void boards just somewhere around where everybody can reach and see them. You also need something to write down the scores and a pencil or paper or pen. And what you want to do is keep track of the rounds here on one side, and then just make a column for each player. This will be player 1, this will be player 2, and that's pretty much it. You're ready to play. And now here's a basic overview of how you take a turn in Aether. So when it's your turn, you take the 2 Materia Prima dice and roll them. And then you set them in the middle. And depending on what's up there, you have to roll these to try and get as many matches as possible. And you want to get as many matches as possible to bank those points before you roll and don't get any matches. And that's called a rebound. And essentially, that's how you take a turn. Now, when you're taking a turn in Aether, there are 4 different types of rolls you can encounter. So the first type of roll would be any 2 core elements. So the core elements again are air, earth, fire, and water. So if you roll these Materia Prima dice and roll any combination of core elements, even if they're the same, even if you roll 2 airs or 2 earths, or earth and a water, that's called a base roll. And in this case, anything that matches the Materia Prima dice that you roll here is a keeper and counts for 1 point each. So you can see there I rolled 2 earths, 2 waters, that'd be 4 points. Now in a base roll, you always save Aether, but they don't count for any points. They just let you keep rolling, right? So you always save Aether in a base roll, and you always sort your blanks in the void. That's a base roll. So another kind of roll you might encounter would be a sub-base roll, and that would be when you roll any one of the 4 core elements. So let's use air and a blank. So this is really the same idea as a base roll. You try to get as many as matching as you can. Blanks always go in the void. Matching elements always go in the Opus. Aether always goes in the Opus. So in this case here, I would have 1, 2, 3 points, and that blank doesn't count for anything. So this is effectively just a diminished base roll. That's why I call it a sub-base roll. So it's the same as a base roll, but you have, less chance. One important caveat about the base roll I forgot to mention previously: if you have matching elements, if you have 2 of the same element as your prima materia or Materia Prima, then each one that you roll that matches it is worth 2 points. 1 for each that it matches. 1 point, 2 points. So effectively, then this would be 6 points, right? Okay, so we've covered a base roll and a sub-base roll. Now let's talk about a super base roll. Super base roll is when you roll any core element and an Aether. And what happens here is it's the same mechanics as a base roll or a sub base roll, you always save ether, you always save the element that matches after you roll. But in this case, your ether counts for a point as well. So this would be 3 points here. 1, 2, 3. Now another type of roll you may encounter is when you roll a blank and an ether. This is called a magnum opus. And in this case, the player can choose which core element they'd like to roll. And we'll stick with air. And they put the materia prima here. So you change the blank dice to be the core element that you want. And then you roll like normal. And in this case, each element that you match is worth 2 points. And any ethers that you roll are worth 1 point. And blanks still go in the void. So that's a magnum opus roll. That's pretty much a player's choice. You keep the ether and it's worth a point, and you choose the core element and it's worth 2. And finally, actually not finally, another type of roll then is the ethereal roll, and that is where you roll 2 ethers. This is the jackpot, basically. So when you roll 2 ethers, you effectively have 3 rolls of the element dice to get as many ethers as possible. And you still always sort your blanks over. And so in this case, normally this would be a rebound because I didn't roll any of my keeper dice, right? I rolled blanks and no ether. But since this is a special roll, this is an ethereal roll, it doesn't count against me. I just keep going. So that was 1 roll. And there, once again, I didn't get any. That's 2 rolls. This is my final roll here. And in the final roll, I got 2 of them. So I'm done now. My turn is over, and I got 2 of them. Each ether that I score in an ethereal roll is worth 5 points. So that would be a 10-point roll right there, and my turn's over. There's no way to mess up an ethereal roll. You can't rebound. You just roll 3 times, and whatever you get, you get. If you roll 3 times and you never get any, then you take a 5-point consolation prize just for being a good sport. And finally, the last type of roll you might encounter is 2 blanks. So if you roll this, effectively your turn is done, skipped. You pass the dice to the next player and you record an R for that round. Now I'd like to talk about the concept of boiling over and reincarnation. So let's say we are on a base roll here. I've got earth and I've got fire. I just rolled those. Let's see if I can make it happen. So I would save my ether. I would save my fires. Anything that matches the materia prima or is an ether gets saved here. And obviously blanks go there. I'll try it, see if I can make it happen. And here we go. We got 1 blank, 1 ether. So I scored a keeper, which means I can technically keep going, but I don't have any dice to roll with. This is called boiling over, and this is a good thing. So what you do in this case is you count up all the points you have in your opus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. You take all of the dice out of the opus, and you continue rolling and retain those points. So I had 7, here's 8, 9, 10, 11, and there's another ether and another blank and 12 points. So now at this case, I've got 12 points from my previous roll and I boiled over and now I got more. I could stay here at 12. Or I could continue trying to roll and boil over again by rolling these. So let's see what happens if I... All right, I got 1 more, and now let's see how lucky I am. I'm gonna try to boil over again. So right now, I have 13 points, 7 from my previous roll, 6 here. And I did it, so I boiled over again, and I'm at 14 points. You can boil over as many times as you can. So 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I'm at 19 points, which is an incredible roll. And I'm going to keep going so I can try and show you what happens if you don't make it. So I'm 19 points, 20 points. So I'll keep going since it's letting me. And there's 21. And I keep going. 22, 23. And I boil over again. There's 23 points. This never happens. I've almost filled up my dice with blanks here. I'm at 23 points. And I can keep going since I got an Aether. So, and there we did it. Okay. And the only reason I keep going is to illustrate how a rebound works here. But so now I've rebounded. I haven't rolled any keepers or any Aethers. So right now, my turn is over. I've rebounded, and if I'm not able to reincarnate, the scorekeeper would then write an R for my score this round, and I would pass the dice over. Now, I mentioned reincarnation. That's another key thing. Once you rebound on any roll type except for an ethereal roll, you can check to see if you can reincarnate, and you check that by seeing if you have more ether in the opus than you have blanks in the void. And in this case, I do not. I have 1 here and I have 7 here. So my turn would be over. I would take these dice out, pass them to the next player. Now let's say, alternatively, I only had 2 blanks in there, and let's say I had 3 Ethers sitting in here and some other stuff, but I didn't roll anything, so I rebounded. But my opus looks like this. I've got 3 Ethers there and 2 blanks here. In this case, I would be able to reincarnate, and what that means is I lose any points in the running score. So like previously in the other turn, I had like 20 something points here. I would lose all those, get right back to 0 for this running score, and take all the dice out of the opus and the void when I reincarnate, and try my turn again with the same materia prima. So it's basically like a redo using the same dice you originally rolled, but all this gets set back to 0, right? So I would just try my turn again, and you can reincarnate and boil over as many times as allowed by the dice. To end the game, you have to be the first player to get to exactly 100 points. If you are rolling on your turn and you roll, your running score hits a total that would put you over 100 points, your turn is over and you take a rebound for that turn. There's no reincarnation in that point. So what I mean is, let's say I'm at 98 points and I've got these 2 up here. And here's I just rolled those, and I'm at 98 points in the bank. It's my turn. Save these guys. Save these. And look here. I just rolled 4 points. That would put me at 102. So in this case, my turn's just over. I take an R. Even though I would be able to reincarnate, when you push over 100 points, you can't do that. It doesn't apply. So in this case, I would take an R for that turn and pass the dice. Now, had I rolled, let's say, that, and only rolled 2 points, say I got 98, that would put me at exactly 100. And I would stay, and all the other players would finish the round, and the game would be over. Okay, so how do you score the game once it's ended? So let's look at this imaginary score sheet, and we'll say player 1 and player 2 played a game that went for 20 rounds before player 1 hit 100 points. So how you score this, so you got the total number of rounds. So each player, the formula is number of rebounds plus the number of rounds total score minus the number of rebounds and the number of rounds. So the score for player 1 would be, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rebounds and 20 rounds. So it would be 100 minus 27. So that would be a total score of 73. Now let's check player 2. Player 2 had 3 rebounds. So they would get a score of 95 minus 23. 20 rounds and 3 rebounds. And they get a score of 72. So you can see player 1 did end up winning, but not by 5 points. They won only by 1 point. It was a much closer game. Had player 2 not gotten one of these rebounds, it could have gone the other way and player 2 could have won. But that's how you score the game. It's S for player score minus R for rebounds and T for turns equals final score.